All right, we are now recording. Yeah, so the breakout room feature is available. So that's the second thing that we'll do. We'll go in, each one of us, or each one of you will go in for just a couple of minutes. We'll do a quick review of where you stand and what, if anything, needs to improve. I'll let you know, unless you've probably already seen your midterm grades, but I'll tell you where you're at and why. And then we're going to take a little look at the information that was in the video posted for last week in place of class, because I'm sure you've all watched it several times, right? It's probably, sorry, I make myself laugh. Yeah. So it is important though, because there is information in that video that will become important later on. It's going to be information that'll be on the test that you'll need to know and so forth. So we'll kind of skim over a little bit of that. And then if we have time, I hope we do, there's actually a related but a new area that I want to move into. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the assignments. So let me get that shared. All right. I'm just going to rearrange my screens here. Two, three. Make sure we're not missing anybody. 10. All right, I just got to get my, now that I see you all, got to get the attendance taken care of here first. I think everybody's here except Kashmir and Mark, who hasn't been here for quite some time, so I don't know if he's dropped the class or what. Everybody else is good. Okay. All right, so Amelia, you are up first. Let me get this up to where I can see it. So this is pretty interesting. I know there's a story here. I told you to not only do a self-portrait, but hopefully make it, maybe say something about you. And I think you're not able to say anything in this picture, but I'm curious to know what your thought process was here and what it was that you were going for.
Well, originally I was gonna draw in a scarier mouth, but I was on a time crunch, so I just decided, hey, no mouth is also spooky, so I went with that.
Okay, so this is basically a Halloweenish type thing.
Yes.
I thought there might have been more of a statement about, well, I don't know. So, that's the thing. You never know about an image if it has if it's trying to make some kind of a statement or whatever. And the fact that, you don't see your mouth at all, that you can make up a lot of stories here.
Yeah.
So yours was just that. So you were just going to do a scary mouth, and then I actually kind of like this maybe even better because it does let the viewer kind of fill in the blanks. It's almost like saying, with your mask, like your mask has removed your, I don't know, your individuality or so. I don't know. There's all sorts of weird things you can come up with in your head. But again, that's, as you know, from many other art classes that you've taken, that's kind of the idea behind art, is to let the viewer decide what it is. So I thought the concept was interesting. I think there's, technically there's a couple little problems. Obviously I think your ear in the photograph is more in focus than your eyes are.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I noticed that too.
And I'm guessing, what did you use to take this? Was it, I haven't gone through the metadata on these.
It was my boyfriend. I used my boyfriend.
Oh, so
I had him hold the camera.
He took the picture. Okay. I was just looking to see if it almost looked like an iPhone shot or something, but which really shouldn't have had. Actually, it would have probably been sharper on the eyes with an iPhone, but
yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that ended up happening. He thought it looked good, and he's taken your class before, so I trusted him.
Yeah, it's hard. LCDs are hard. You're looking at the back of a camera as far as critical sharpness is concerned. Like I said, when I'm in my studio, I don't even use the LCD on the back of the camera. I've got it wirelessly connected to an iPad, which then goes to a 32-inch television monitor. So I'm looking at that. It's a lot easier for me to see. But when I'm out in the field, I have a magnifying loupe that I use that fits right over the LCD on the back, which is really cool. It's like looking at a high definition screen. So it's a lot easier, and but it's really tough normally on most of the LCDs. It looks sharp. You know, sometimes it looks sharper than it actually is, but anyway, the concept is cool. There's even the, you know, to some extent the composition is interesting because of the way the mask is pulled. It creates a diagonal down towards your fingers. Your eyes are on an opposite diagonal, and also up near the rule of thirds in that area. So intentional or not, you know, it does create, you know, a little bit of dynamic play that way. So I was hoping that there was going to be this earth-shattering message behind your image.
I don't tend to do that very often. I do what looks cool and then let people interpret it however they want.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, a lot of people do that. Sometimes because it's a little more disappointing sometimes if you have an actual design thought and a message in mind and nobody gets it, right?
Yeah.
Then you're like, well, you know, you feel like you failed at it. But to kind of let people make up their own minds, again, that's kind of what art does. How did you how did you remove your mouth? You know, I can see that there's some you know, I don't know if it was just a blur that you did or what, but
so after I edited it in Lightroom to add the vignette, I tried to use the Photoshop Express app that I had on my iPad, and the heal tool was not cooperating with me, so I put it into Procreate and just kind of smudged it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks a little more like a smudge or a blur than it does a replacement or anything. Not that, yeah, nothing wrong with that. For this particular technique, we're just looking for, you know, some type of an image that that has a message or, you know, allows the viewer to come up with one. So cool. Well done. Looks good. I don't believe Ashton is here. She did tell me that she had to go out of town for a funeral, so I'm going to look at her image anyway. So this is very similar to one of the images that we looked at, you know, when I was showing you examples for self-portraits. And I don't know, it looks to me like the eyes in the phone are not hers, which adds a little bit of weirdness to it. I don't know if any of you know that or not, if you know her well enough to know what she did here. But so she, you know, the base image is in black and white, the eyes are in color, but it looks like, if I had to guess, I'd say those were a guy's eyes. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. Maybe it's just the fact that it's color and it's, you know, the perspective is off a little bit. It's hard to say, but it's a simple idea, but it actually, you need somebody to help you. Obviously somebody's got to be taking the picture and making sure the phone's lined up right to make this work. So she got it right. It does look pretty weird, pretty creepy, but it's an interesting shot too. I like the background being that far out of focus. You know, it would have been a little distracting otherwise, and black and white tends to simplify things too. So this one looks good, even though it is a bit of a knockoff on an image that I think we did look at, but it's still done pretty well. So that one works. So let's see. So Abigail, we have a dead rat.
False. It's a dog.
Oh, I thought it was. It is. I can see the ears now. Okay.
Dog.
So on your original, I'm guessing you used a mirror to shoot these with, because the finished one is reversed so that everything's readable. So there's one, and then on the second one, we went into a vertical, and yeah, a lot of nice color and tone brought out in this. Let me just look at them one at a time here, because they're pretty similar. I think I think I like this one a little better for a couple of reasons. This one being a little more extreme, there is a little loss of sharpness in the camera, which is the most foreground part. This one doesn't have that problem. Although I do like the dog skeleton in this one, kind of like he's checking out the LCD on the back or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's a great shot. But I do like the color that you processed through in this. The decision to crop it down a little bit was a good one. The tree coming out of your head is not too bad, actually, because the background is a little softer and it's pretty busy back there. It just so happens that it comes in an area of the sky that's lighter and kind of devoid of leaves, and that's the only reason that I see it at all. It is something to consider and to keep an eye on. Always watch that background. Again, one of the hardest things to do when you've got the camera's not to your eye in this case, but which is probably part of the problem. You were just,
I was just winging it.
Yeah, it is hard to train yourself to look at all. What I do is, and this is subconscious after a long period of time, to scan all four corners of the image as I'm looking through the viewfinder. And in my mind, I'm separating the subject from the background, because we can, when we're looking at it in real time, we're looking at it in 3 dimensions. And then you take the picture and suddenly you've reduced it to 2 dimensions. And those things that you couldn't see before, now suddenly you do. So it does take a long time to get to the point where you can almost subconsciously really eliminate distractions, just because you're used to being disappointed when you look at the image later and you're like, oh crap, I should have seen that. So it takes a while. It takes a long time to get to that point. There's all this technical stuff that you have to get through first, and understanding how the camera works and all of that before you can really get to that. But it's I think I've mentioned it before. It's a lot like a golfer, a bowler, a baseball player at the plate. There's all sorts of analogies that you can use where you have to learn all these techniques. A golfer is probably a good one, because there's so many things that you learn in a golf swing, where the ball is in your stance, how your weight's distributed, how you swing the hips and use you coil your body and use your hip swing to pull the club through, rather than, just trying to power the ball. But then once you learn all that, to really get good at it, you have to forget it. It has to become second nature. You have to just feel it subconsciously as you're going through. And it does take a while. But again, this wasn't a huge deal. Like I said, it wasn't like this, sharp tree sticking right out of the center of your head or anything like that. Just a slight comment I wanted to make, just kind of keep your eye out for little things like that. And if you do see them after the fact, get to the point where you can use some editing software a little more effectively, you can always remove that stuff too. But looks pretty good otherwise. I do like the processing that you did on this. The color looks great on it. All right. Taylor. So there are a couple really good images here, like really, really good. I'm going to put them both up side by side so you guys can see them. So I'm a fan of layered images and semi-transparent images, and you have to be really careful about how you do them, because it's easy to overdo it. And in this case, you've got a number of things that are going really, really well for it. So I'm going to let you tell me about them before I make any more comments.
So I just tried to use images that I've taken, like the rose and the spider. Like the spider's always been my favorite picture that I've ever taken. If you can kind of see up in the right hand corner of the photo on the right, you see the spider's face and eyes. And I've always just really loved that. So I just wanted to put that in there because it just like shows that I really like love nature, and I try to like focus on like tiny little details like that, like insects and stuff. So, and I love like the overlapping and
Yeah,
like
and
on the
it's very dimensional too. So I've seen a lot of students that do this type of thing, but it tends to not that there's anything wrong with it, but a lot of times it tends to look more like an illustration. This still looks like a photograph, and I really like that. I like the composition that you used on this one, especially. There's a balance here between that flower in the lower right, your face in the upper left. Again, the way you repeated the spider and use that is pretty cool. And then I think the addition, what you did with the makeup and the nail polish, I think just kind of completes the whole thing. Overall, the color is just really saturated to the point where it's almost what you'd consider garish, but it works for this image. It's just, you know, as a self-portrait or even a portrait, I mean, you still, with everything that's going on here, my eye still goes to your face, and then I kind of revolve around the image and look at other things. The image mask that you did on the interior, so that you've got, the square on the inside and the square on the outside. Yeah, there's just a lot going on here. I don't know. Whoops, somebody might have got bumped out.
Yeah, and that wasn't intentional. It was just like the way that the photos were overlapping. It kind of like made that frame. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Also, that just sort of happened based on the images that you used.
Yeah. And because like once you start like double exposing things, places start to get darker and darker, and that was kind of just like, I don't know, somehow happened like that. But and then like on the photo on the left, you can see how like at the top of my head there's kind of like that frame like starting to happen there. But I love how like I try to get like the sunlight in my eye in that picture, so it'd, like look really blue. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so a couple things about that one. The lighting that's on you would normally be just horrid. like normally for a portrait, I would look at that and go, that is absolutely the worst thing you could have done. But in this case, because of all the overlap that you've got, and I don't know if you were doing any blending modes or anything to do this, that's another thing that will cause some of the effects that you're seeing. But what's really cool, your eye does stand out. Okay, so to me, when I look at that image, even though it's not absolutely the brightest thing in that frame, for some reason, and it's probably because of the contrast of that area, my eye still goes to that eye. The rose, the way that overlaps your face, almost looks like a mask, like a Phantom of the Opera type mask on your face. And again, there's a lot going on here, but none of it keeps me from going to where, my eyes should go. And so I don't know if there's any underlying meaning here, or you just which is what I do. I just sort of play with images until I get something that I like. But there's just a lot of depth to both of them. I was pretty, I don't want to say I was surprised, but these definitely stood out to me more than almost all the others. There is one other one that really stood out, but yeah, overall, I just think as a self-portrait, you can't really ask for much more. Again, using a lot of different techniques. I'm a little curious about the cropping on the one on the left, the black at the top and the bottom. Is that intentional that you left that, or is it just the format of the original file, or I'm not sure.
I think it's just the format.
And again, normally I would look at that and say, well, why didn't you take that off? But for some reason, it just doesn't bother me. I like the square format of the images in both of these. So yeah, not much I can say negative. They both look pretty good. Definitely too. And I should be doing this, and I haven't been. Let me start getting
I keep on getting so distracted because I have a bird, and every time he hears somebody talk, he has to try to talk with them. So he's just like chirping like so crazy.
Like now, you mean?
Yeah, like I don't know if you could hear him, but I had to walk back to this room because he's just like, once like you started talking and I started talking, he's just like going crazy.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything. I don't know if anybody else did, but I didn't hear anything. So between the two images, Taylor, which one is your favorite?
Probably the spider, just because I've always just loved that spider photo.
I think I would definitely agree. I think that it's just a little more, it's definitely more eye-catching because of the oversaturation on it and everything, and then the composition working as well as it did. So I agree. That's probably your best. All right. Yeah. So well done. That might be, I mean, I haven't looked back through all of the assignments that everybody's done just yet, but that might be the best you've submitted so far. I really like those.
Oh, thank you.
All right. And now we go to, as soon as it'll let me, we go to Chris. So, wow. Okay. Again, just like Taylor's sort of out in a class all by itself. So I'm going to let you walk me through what you did and if there's anything, any statement here other than just, trying to create something cool.
I don't know. I wanted to make it look like trippy almost, to be honest with you. And there's that room, it's right across the hall from Fensel's office. It has all those like statue heads. And I found some mirrors. And so I just threw the mirrors on top of each other. And I knew that I could do this in post. So I just thought I kind of put my third eye there. I don't know. So that's pretty much my only like actual planning to it.
So to me, what it looks like, my first impression when I see this is like a street mural on an interstate underpass or something like that. You go to some, Cleveland and some areas like that in the inner cities, and you're going to see a ton of stuff like this. But so tell me about the technique, like how it was, what it was that you did specifically to achieve this.
It's just like a double exposure. I'm pretty sure it's the same exact image. It's just I did it, just layered the two images, and then I'm pretty sure I just oil painted. It's really simple. I didn't do anything crazy.
So it looks like, I think you're right. I think the two images of you in the top half are the same image, and then it looks like below that is just a flipped copy of that, correct?
Yeah. Those are actually mirrors.
Oh, okay. You did say them. All right. Now I'm starting to see a little bit more what you were talking about. Okay. I couldn't picture that at first, but now I see them. They're in front of you, and that's where the reflect. I got it. All right. So there's a lot going on here, especially if you start looking through the background and looking at different torsos and faces and things like that. But again, if I give this the squint test, and that's my test for an image when I try to find out if I'm looking at the subject, if I'm looking at what I should be looking at, or if there's a distraction. When I do the squint test, my eye goes right to the face, and actually both faces, upper and lower, but particularly the upper because of size. So even though the whole image is a very mid-tone image, that's still the area of greatest contrast, and that's where my eye goes. So yeah, really, really well done. This is something that I'd probably, I'd make this my social media profile if I were you. This is really cool. So well done. Oops, hang on. Did not move that over. All right. So Jacob, this is an interesting one too. So here we've got his two original images, and then he combined it into this. So I see a couple of things technically right off the bat. You obviously balance the color from the overly warm tone in the originals to this one. Obviously combined the two faces, but you did it in a way that's a little bit different than most people would have done. I think I would think 9 times out of 10, if I see somebody do this, they would split the face right down the middle. You went on a diagonal, which is an interesting choice. you did a really good job of lining the two up. And I don't know if so. So tell me about the process here. Did you? I'm guessing that you just stood and had someone else take the picture, and the only change was the glasses, right? So perspective and everything stayed the same. Is that correct?
I didn't have help with this. I had a clicker.
Oh, okay. So even better. So you just, pushed the button, took one, took the glasses on or off, clicked the second one, and
yeah, so, as still as I possibly could.
And so the camera was what? It was was it locked on a tripod or on a table?
On a tripod.
Yeah. So that's
I couldn't have kept that still without it.
Yeah, and that's the point I wanted to make, is that this is a really, really tough thing to do if you're hand holding a camera. So the fact that it's locked down and everything stayed the same, focal length, camera height, distance to subject, and all of that, that's what makes this a little easier. But tell me a couple of questions I have. Tell me why the diagonal, which I like, by the way. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just wondering if you had a reason for why you went diagonal, and why the separation, the white line, rather than just butting the two up to each other.
I did diagonal because I figured most people would just do in the middle. And as far as just a white line, I thought it made it more separate than just having the glasses just randomly end. It would look weird.
Yeah, and I think if I try to visualize it, I think you're right. I think I don't think it would have the same effect. I don't think it would be obvious what was done. I mean, I think it would be obvious actually, but yet I think this just adds another layer to it. So. Oh, there we go. All of my images froze for a second, so I don't know if you were hearing me there or not. But yeah, I definitely agree. I like the diagonal. I like the white line. I do think both of them add something to it. When I first looked at it, it looked weird to me. Like I'm thinking that you did something like, I don't know, I was seeing a perspective off or something, like maybe one side of your face was a different size than the other, but it's not. I mean, if you look at this and you stare at it, it's right there. I mean, I'm sure you knew when you lined the two up how easy it was to do that. So I think it's just a matter, and so think about it, guys. All he did here, the only difference between one side of his face to the other is that there's a set of glasses on one eye and not on the other. But look how strange it looks, and I mean strange in a good way. Like, I don't know. I just. Yeah, I just like the way it was done. I think I can't think of anything I would have told you to do differently for this type of an effect. So I think you did really well. Was there any meaning behind it? Is there any, There
wasn't really much of a meaning, more of a interpretation kind of piece.
Gotcha. And yeah, I ask those questions about meaning just because I know we're in a basic basic photography class, and that's really outside the scope of it. But I know personally, I'm now working more and more on concepts that have, which is a very difficult thing for me to do, is to illustrate an idea or a message. And I'm working on a couple that I've been working on for 2 years, and I just don't have it down yet. So it's a really tough thing to do, but I always like to hear if somebody had an idea, like, they're saying, again, just like with Amelia's image, I think it was Amelia's at the beginning, you can look at this and kind of make up a story. You can say, well, my God, I can think of 1,000 different things right now with what's going on politically in this country. You can say, well, part of me leans to the left and part of me leans to the right, and part of me sees things one way and part of me sees it another way, which is kind of cool. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to define that. You can let the viewer define it. But I think this is an image that definitely can do that. So you did pretty well here. Happy with it. All right, Alana, and how come you and, oh wait, yeah, I was going to say, how come you guys aren't together?
We just now got back together because her Wi-Fi wouldn't work.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on there, because
now we're back.
I think it's the first time since the first class that I've seen you, or had seen you separated. All right, so let's take a look at we'll look at the original and the finished ones together. We'll look at all the images first, and then we can talk about them a little bit. So we've got a reversal here again because of the mirror. Same thing here. And also, well, they all look like they've been reversed, but necessarily would have had to have been. So it's interesting, the choice you made. Let's just take a look at, wait, what is the last one here? Oh, okay, so this one and this one are the, I may have had the wrong two paired up there. So it's interesting that you went to black and white here, because the color is actually really harmonious, even though it's off, like it's not balanced properly in the original images. The clothing that you're wearing and what has happened with the walls and the ceiling above you is kind of interesting. But I will say that the conversion to black and white has made your face stand out more. It's clearer and more easily seen. So let's just look at your finished images. We'll put those all up. And obviously we're playing with mirrors again. So tell me a little bit about what you did and why.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
Just playing with mirrors.
Yeah.
So I'm asking, like, particularly the first image, okay, where you're holding the camera to your eye, but your hand is outstretched. There had to be a reason in your head that you did that. I mean, this.
You have to say it. Maybe like a cry for help.
Well, I mean, I don't know that that's something that we want to laugh about, but no, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, and again, if I don't know you and I just look at the image, and I actually I think the last one for that might be even better. Yeah. Let me just pull that one up. So I think there's a difference there's a couple of differences here between that one and the first one. I like there's even a little more intensity, I think, in your face on this one, but I think the addition, I don't think we saw the shoes in the first one, did we? No. So this one to me looks almost more like you're reaching through, like, you know, Alice through the looking glass kind of thing, or you're reaching in to pull something out. Whereas this one, the feeling is more pushing something away. I love the off balance mirrors. Okay. I think that has created some real drama with, angles, triangles, diamond shapes, things like that, which I think is really effective in all of them. I think at first I like this one, I think the best, but the more I look at them, I really think I like that one because we do see your face a little more. We do see a little more intensity in the gaze, but yet there's, again, just like a couple of these other images, there's a story that I can make up in my head that makes this work a little bit more. And even the fact that your shoes are just barely there, I don't know, there's just something a little odd about it, but I like it. You know, and this one is maybe a little more straightforward. Just sort of saying, you know, hey, here I am. But as far as a concept image, I think these are the black and whites are really, really good. So tell me why the black and white? Anything in particular?
I don't know. I just think it looked cool, I guess.
So is it something that because I don't know if it's you, but I have been seeing a lot of images in black and white.
Yeah,
from
I feel
you
like
guys.
black and white.
And that's good. I mean, it's not a bad thing by any means. Some people just they see better in black and white. It does eliminate problems. In this case, like I said, we had good color harmony even in the color image, but the black and white is a little more stark and it is a little more kind of in your face. So I kind of like that. And if anybody actually did watch the video that I posted last week, oh, hey, let's find out. So if you did watch the video, you know that there are like at least 7 different ways in Photoshop to convert an image into black and white. And you also know that they all suck except for one. Does anybody remember which one? Because it is mentioned in the video. There were actually a couple of Easter eggs in that video. And when I say Easter eggs, what I mean is a couple of things that I could have easily used to find out if you watched it or not. Because they were a little odd. They didn't belong there, sort of. But all I'm going to say at this point is take the 25 minutes. If you haven't done it, take the 25 minutes and watch that, because there is information in there that's gonna be necessary for you to know. We're gonna skim over a little bit of it later today, but there's more than that in there. So I don't know the method you use for converting to black and white, but we'll talk a little bit about what I think is the best one in the next part of the class. So anyway, I don't know if you disagree or agree, but for me, this image here, I think, is my favorite. If you have one that you like better, let me put them all up here. I kind of actually missed that one, I think, going through. So there's 5, correct? Yeah.
I do like the one that you like.
Yeah, I'm just looking at them again. I think it's got a couple. I really like the second one. The first 2, I think, are definitely my favorites. But for whatever reason, I like being able to see the one eye. So I think that's probably the one I would go with. All right, let me find that here. And now we're on to David. All right, so there's the original image and there's the finished one. So David, tell me, this one definitely, as a self-portrait, there's got to be a reason that you shot this the way you did, and I'm dying to know what it was.
Well, I'm not really one to like my picture taken.
So of course it makes sense that you would take a photography class, right?
Yeah, well, and I kind of liked how the tree looked, but so I was trying to figure out a way to get both the assignment fulfilled and get a picture of the tree. So I just kind of laid down and took the picture.
Okay, so let me tell you a couple of things. So technically, first of all, and I have not looked, and I should do that now. Let me check your metadata out. Yeah, so again, you have a very, very small aperture, f22, which is why the shutter speed is very slow, and the shutter speed being slow actually creates a little motion, the camera movement, which is why it's not as sharp as it could be. In this case, I don't think it hurts you because it is a little more of an interpretive image. So I don't mind. And actually, I'm going to make a suggestion to you, because there's one thing I thought of when I saw this that not only would have made a little motion make sense, but it would have been hilarious as well. So when I look at this, your feet are crossed, right? So you look like you're in a little more of a relaxed position.
Yeah.
Imagine this if your feet had not been crossed, if they had been kind of spread apart. The immediate thought that would go into everybody's head is that you just fell out of that tree. And that would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
And then also, like I said, a little bit of, maybe even a little more movement or a little more motion in that case to make it look like the camera just sort of went off as you tumbled out of the tree limbs. But even still, I like the concept of it. I like the idea. Hang on one second here. All right. And, yeah, I know a lot of people don't like having their picture taken. I'm not sure why. I mean, obviously we all know people that really shouldn't like having a picture taken, but none of you have that problem. So it's not something you should worry about. But I do like the fact that you know, in a self-portrait, you don't have to have your face visible to work. I just, At first, when I looked at it, I thought you were like maybe this was a hammock hanging from the tree or something like that. Which again, your mind can go there. Your mind can say, "Well, that's what that is,"
Yeah.
if you want to. But I don't know. I just thought if the feet had been, separated and looked like you were falling, that might have been kind of funny. But that's just me. I like strange things, strange humor. People getting hurt, love that. Just kidding. But no, it's interesting overall. I think I agree with you. The tree's kind of cool looking at it from that angle, especially this time of year. Wanted to see a little more reason for the motion, and I think that would have given it to me. But again, you can say if you were in a hammock and the hammock was swinging, you get the same thing. So
Yeah.
just kind of grasping at straws there. So let me drag that in. Oops, hang on. We got to change the folder back. All right. And now we are down to Haley. So there's original. So not a ton of difference between the original and the finished one. Obviously, the processing has done a little more as far as color saturation and sharpness. But tell me why, first of all, as far as the image is concerned, like what you did and why.
Well, I had a hard time figuring out what I wanted to do. Like at first I was going to do something with the mirror, but then I was like, nah, like just my brain was like, no, you're doing something different. I'm like, okay. And then I went to my dad's house and I saw this yellow tree and I was like, that's like more yellow than my car. I have a yellow Volkswagen. And I was like, I'm going to have to take a picture with that tree. So I went up to it and I was trying to figure out what to do. At first I wanted to climb up it. So I almost did the same picture as somebody else, but I'm too big of a person and I can't climb trees, so that didn't happen.
You might have ended up with the picture that David was going for, falling out of it.
So I just, tried to do something different, put my body in different areas, and this was the one that was my favorite. Yeah.
So what you ended up with is a very symmetrical image. And again, as a self-portrait, it's a little unusual because you take up so small an area in the photo, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think the thing that I like the most about it is that position in front of it. So the tree isn't, the fact that you're right against the tree keeps that tree coming out of your head from being a problem, because it's not really, like it's sort of surrounding you. But what I like about that is, again, it creates that contrast because your skin tone against the bark of the tree really pops. Like I can really, again, when I look at this image and squint at it, that's the first thing my eye goes to. That's what I see.
I wore black that day for a reason.
Yeah, and that was the next comment I was going to make. The clothing is a huge problem in a lot of photos. So a couple little things that, normally, so if you were coming to me and you were paying me to create a portrait of you, I would tell you no shirts with logos, no patterns in anything. Obviously you've got a pattern in the pants, you've got the rainbow colors on your feet. However, they are so kind of understated, like they really don't intrude. And I think the biggest reason for that is the fact that we have this expansive image and you're relatively small in it. If this were cropped in a lot tighter on you, I think that might have been more of an issue, but in this case it isn't. Like I said, I just do like the fact that your face is really separated from that tree. And again, I'm just squinting at it again. And even though there's an area of sky to the upper right, which is bright, it is the brightest part of the image, there's not as much contrast up there as there is where your face is in front of the tree. And then again, the symmetrical composition with the tree branches sort of creating a canopy above you. It's a very simple image. There's nothing really earth-shattering about it, but it's effective. It looks good, and it does show that there was a little bit of thought put in it, other than I'm just going to go sit in front of a tree and and have a picture taken. So obviously you didn't take the picture. You had somebody take the picture, right?
Yeah, my dad took it.
Yeah. And even the lighting on it, it's very soft. It's not overly directional, but there is enough direction that I can see a bit of a pattern, a few shadows soft shadows on your face. So that gives us some three-dimensionality. Again, it's not an earth-shattering picture, but it's pretty well done for what it is. And it is a little different, I think, than what a lot of people would have done. So well done there. Let me throw that one in. Down to our last two. All right, so here's our original, and here's our finished one. Now, there's got to be a story here. There is nobody that makes themselves half man, half ape without a reason behind it.
Yeah. The main reason is I don't like the way that side of my face looks in pictures. And I saw this post on Instagram from this like guy I really like. And I like his content and stuff, and he kind of did something like it. So I was like, a pretty easy fix.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing, but I am laughing. You think this part of the face looks better than your part of the face?
It's all about visualization.
Yeah, and it's all. I think we're all a little bit super critical of ourselves. Obviously, and there are things about ourselves that we don't like that most people wouldn't even notice, but it doesn't make it any less real. So I get it. So there's some Photoshop issues here, obviously, because we've got, the masking is a little bit rudimentary, but again, you could make a case for saying that that's intentional to give, an effect. The thought that came to my mind when I first saw this is something that, obviously you're not going to recognize because of the age difference, but there is an old movie, well, it's old now, and I'm trying to think, William Hurt, I believe, is the actor who plays the lead, and it's called Altered States. And it revolves around, he's a scientist who is doing experimentation with saline tanks, the sensory deprivation tanks where you get in and you're in the darkness and you just float. And he's doing experiments with that. And what ends up happening is that his mind, he's reverting to an earlier state of evolution in his mind. And his mind actually causes a physical manifestation. And what happens is, after so many times in this tank, he literally turns into a primate, which sounds kind of stupid. But if you watch the movie, it makes a little more sense in the way it's played out than the way I just described it. And of course, he gets out of the tank, and he's ape person that's running havoc through the city and all of that. But it's really more of a movie that makes a statement about the primeval state that we are. We tend to think of ourselves as so evolved, but the fact is that on the evolutionary scale, we're not. We're not very far removed from that part of our evolution. Just saw a thing the other day that, and I see these things all the time, like if you put the whole 4.6 billion years that, the Earth has existed into a 12-month calendar or something like that. But somebody did it, and they said if the 4.6 billion years, if you change the scale to make that 46 years, man has only existed for about 4 hours of that 46 years. And out of that 4 hours, the Industrial Revolution just began a minute ago. And yet, in that minute, we've pretty much destroyed 50% of the Earth's resources. So, again, a comment about our evolution and where we stand in it. But we're infants, really, at this point. And so even though that might not have been your intent when you did this, again, as an art piece, it can evoke all sorts of things. And that's what it did for me, is that it makes a comment on the fact that we're not quite as evolved as we think we are. So, but yeah, interesting idea, interesting concept. I would never have guessed that there's anything wrong with the other side of your face if I look back at it. It looks pretty symmetrical to me, actually. But if you like that better, we'll go with that.
Yeah, just like rest in peace, Harambe,
Oh, hang on. We got an auto.
What was it?
I'm sorry. I got a message on my screen that I had to take care of. And I said it out loud. All right. So last one is Eva. And so I'm going to guess. So here's the original. Here's the finished one. I'm going to guess that you took some comments that I've made in the past to some photos, not necessarily yours, but some other ones, and took them to heart about, here's a great path through the woods. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a person on there, right?
Yep.
And you're right. If I look at this image without the person, it creates a little bit of a curve, through the image, and it's pleasant, but it doesn't really, there's nothing about it that grabs my attention. So is that actually you in the photo?
Yep, that's me.
Okay, so obviously somebody else took the picture. So I will not.
On a timer.
Oh, it was on a timer. Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't look. Let me look at your original metadata. Excuse me. Yeah, the 1/8 of a second. Probably would have been a good idea. This would have been a good image to bump the ISO up a little bit to get a little faster shutter speed, because I do see some, not so much, and I don't know, maybe it's no, it's actually not movement, it's a focus issue. I see these leaves in the right foreground are more in focus than you are. If I look at the path and the leaves that you're on, that area is very much out of focus. So was that intentional, or was that just a byproduct?
No, that was
Yeah, I think if that had been reversed, I think if the foreground area had been a little less sharp and it sharpened as it got to you, it would have been a little more effective. But I like the concept, and I especially love the balloon. So again, if I envision this with just you walking down there, it's better than without anything on the path, but it's even better with the balloon, because now again, it raises questions. Why is this person walking down the path with a balloon? And why is the balloon red? Well, for me, it's all about contrast. That balloon stands out a lot more that way. So, and again, I like the curve of the path rather than a straight path or even a diagonal through there. It has a meandering feel to it. So I think you did a lot of things right here. I think if I were going to change anything at all, and I like the vertical composition. I'm going to play with this a little bit here for a second and just see, cropping wise, if there's anything I can do. And once I get this up, I'll share that screen. Okay, there we go. So let me share that screen. All right, so I need to clear that. All right, it may not let me go into it. Figured as soon as I change the screen view to full screen, it kicks me out. So, all right, so now we're back. All right, so I'm just curious. So the bottom part of this image looks like there might, to me, be a little more than necessary. And then if I pull this over, so again, looking at those cropping lines, when you do that, you get those lines on the thirds. It tends to put you in a little better spot, but I'm wondering even about putting you dead center here and just cropping that down. I don't know. That's an option, right? Because now the trees, those vertical trees behind you, become a little more of a compositional element. We still have the curve of the path that leads me down to you. I don't know. Just it just sometimes when I see an image, to me, it looks like there's a little too much left. And I do see that you took some of it off. Let me get out of this. We'll go back to bridge. So yeah, from your original, you definitely did crop it down. You did take some of that foreground out. But I think when I look at those trees and the cool verticals that they create, I might have even tried it as a horizontal like from here, like below your feet to above the balloon. I don't know. There's a couple of different things that I would have played with. It's not wrong. What you did isn't wrong. I'm just throwing alternatives at you. Just that might have strengthened it a little bit compositionally. I don't know. Even from the original, if you had done just a very slim line and leave that whole path, I don't know. There's like 3 different things I think of that would have been possible. I don't know that any of them would have, again, made it an earth-shattering image, but you're really close. Like it's not that far off. I love the idea that you put behind it. The black outfit definitely makes you stand out from that background. The red balloon draws even more attention. So those things really well done. And the location, I think, was good for this. So I'm not even going to say you missed by a little bit, because I think you got it. I'm just thinking that you could have maybe gone just a little more and strengthened it a touch, not a ton, but a little bit.
Okay.
But pretty well done.
Thanks.
All right, so now we are looking at, there should be 12 images, which, am I seeing all 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no. I'm not even getting a scroll here. And that is only for that. All right, let's go into the navigating view. And we'll increase the size here. Okay. I think that's probably easier for you guys to see than what we were doing before. All right, so we have a number of images here. And again, as I look through, I'm pretty happy for one reason or another with every one of these. I don't, there are times, I'll be honest, early on in the semester, there were times where I struggled to, I put an image in for consideration, even though I didn't think you had a strong image. Somebody may not have had a strong image at all. But all of these in their own right, for one reason or another, are strong images. So, but we are going to vote. So I think I can see, let me make sure I've got all of you here.
Looks like you have 2 of mine.
I have 2 of yours?
You have the original and the...
Oh, I do.
Okay, yeah.
And that's why there's 12 images and not 11. All right. See, you should have kept quiet. We might have gotten more votes that way.
It's okay. It's okay.
All right, so we'll start from the upper left. This is just a show of hands again, guys. So Chris's self-portrait in the upper left. All right, let's go with, all right, and then Amelia's second. Abigail's dead dog. The iPhone. All right, then we're down to Taylor's. 3, 4, okay. James. Eva. On the path of destruction. Jacob. David. And then we're down to, it's Haley, I believe. And then finally, the mirror shot. All right, guys, we have a tie. And these are our 2 ties. We've got a David's self-portrait on the right and Taylor's on the left. Both had the same number of votes. So we got to break the tie here. Actually, we don't. Nah, we don't. Because it doesn't matter, I don't think, which one comes out on top. I was going to give the other one a point anyway. So let's go back to the navigating screen where we can see them all. There we go. So those 2 tied. I like both of those. Chris, obviously, you're off in a zone all by yourself here. That's probably, to me, the next strongest image in here. Man, there's just, I honestly could almost give a point to all of you, but the two images that tied definitely get one, and then Chris, I'm adding yours on top of that. So those three get the points this week. Let me add those in. And then Chris. Uh-oh, Chris, that has pulled you into the lead. See, Eva, you should have left both your images in because he was tied with you. All right, let me get out of here and we have to go back to the gallery. So let's take about 10 minutes here to stretch our legs and smell some fresh air. When we come back, I think what I want to do, I'm struggling here because if I do what I think I should do next, then we run the risk of running out of time. So I think what we're going to do when we come back, I'm going to do the individual review with each one of you. We'll go into a breakout room and we'll just kind of go over where you're at. And we'll do that alphabetically by your last name. So that'll give you an idea. Eva, you're going to be last, so that gives you a little extra time. Abby, you're going to be first, and the rest of you will fall in line. It shouldn't take more than a few minutes with each one of you, but that'll give you some idea as to where you are. If I get to your spot and you haven't come back, then you just get an F for the semester. That's all, just so you know. All right, so it's let's call it 5:15. Let's come back at 5:25. We'll go through those real quickly and then finish the last part. All right. And we're back. Let me get my screens back in order. Okay. So I'm assuming that everybody's back. I can't see everybody, but I see cameras are still here. So I'm assuming that you're all still present and accounted for. Good. Okay. So I think I'm just looking at the time we have left, which isn't much. So instead of starting any new material, what I want to do is, well, it might be new material to some of you. I want to look at one aspect of something that was in the video that I posted for last week. And I really, really, really do need you guys to go watch that. It's only 25 minutes, particularly the black and white section, because that's going to be the assignment for next week. I would like you to create at least one black and white image, but I want it to be a really good black and white image. And if you want to know how to do a really good black and white, watch the video. But I will show you one. So I'll tell you a little bit about it anyway. So there are at least 7 different ways in Photoshop, and probably in most other editing software as well, to convert an image to black and white. Now, even if you don't have Photoshop and don't have access to that, there are things that you need to watch. So what we're looking for in a really good black and white is a conversion that does not lose detail in either the highlights or the shadows. And so histograms play a big part of that, which is also in that video. That's the first part of the video, which explains what a histogram is. Anybody know what a histogram is? Do you have a definition for a histogram, anybody? Do you know what it?
Sonar.
Yeah, it's like exactly. It's sort of like a sonar reading of the image. I'm going to see if I can pull up a little visual for that. I'm not sure where it is, so give me a second to locate that. We're going to probably only go about 10 more minutes here, but if that. But I would like you to see this. It's a little easier to see it than it is to hear about it. So let me open this file. I hope I got the right one. while this is opening, what I'll tell you, a histogram basically will show you visually whether you have issues in your highlights and your shadows and how your exposure is doing. Let me scroll back until I find them. Here we go. Skip. All right. So I'm going to share this screen. Okay, so what you're looking at, and I wish I actually do have something else I can show you, but this is just a couple of quick slides. The histogram is the visual that you're looking at here, and it's very simple. The left side, you can actually see, well, you can see some of them anyway. The little triangle that's underneath the left side is black. The one in the middle is gray, and the one on the right is cut off, but it's white. So what this is representing is the 0 to 255 scale, 0 being black, 255 being white. So the histogram that you're looking at is telling me that this is a relatively dark image. Most of the pixels in this image are to the left of the midtones, meaning that they're a little darker. And so to give you some examples, so here's one. This is inside the Palace of Gold down in Moundsville. And primarily we've got, you know, a lot of mid-tone to darkness in the ceiling, the chairs, the floor. There are some brighter areas, and there are some things that are up at 255. If you look at that histogram, you can see that there's even a little spike there up at that range. Does anybody have an, so could anybody guess what that little spike represents in the image? Like what part of the image is that little spike at 255 representing? Anybody guess?
The lights.
The blue chairs.
So whoever said the lights, you're absolutely right. Those light fixtures up there at the top, that's white without detail. That is as bright white as you're going to get, and that's at 255. So that's what that little spike is showing, but it's showing us that there's not that many of them because the spike's not really high. But when you look at the left side, the shadow side, well, look at the backs of these chairs. That's total black, total darkness in there. So all of those ones that are slammed up against the left, that's really where they reside. There's some areas up in the ceiling that are that dark as well. And then in the middle of that, those areas right in the middle here, that's the floor, the walls, things like that. So conversely, if you go from there to an image like this, you can see that the histogram has shifted. And now it's telling me, and even without seeing this image, I could tell you this is a brighter image because most of the pixels in the image are to the right of the midtones. Now, what's interesting to note, again, we have a spike on the left, and these little spikes, you guessed it, are representing the black areas, the really deep black areas in the fronts of these lids, and also even the text on the labels. And on the highlight side, you'll notice that it actually starts to come down before it gets to 255. Most of those, where all that area is spiked, is the background. And I never want my background in a light image like this to be so bright that it's actually creating flare and blowing back problems into my subject. So it's not completely bright. The brightest thing in this image is probably this reflection right here on the plastic, and maybe in a couple of other areas like that. So that's what a histogram tells us by looking at an image. If this was slammed all the way up against the right-hand side, I would know I actually have an exposure problem. In this case, even though the blacks are slammed up against the left-hand side, I don't have an exposure problem because these areas on the backs of the chairs, I'm just not going to get any detail there unless I had put a flash on them and lit them that way. So I'm not worried about the fact that I have some detail that's lost in there. The overall image is exposed pretty well. So same thing holds true when you convert your images to black and white. There are a number of places where you see a histogram. One, you'll see it on the back of your camera. If you hit the info button, you can actually get a histogram that'll show you about the image that you just took. In Photoshop, you get them in the raw file converter, same thing in Lightroom. You get them in the main version of Photoshop. If you go under window histogram, it'll show you that. So there's a lot of places where you can get access to and see where this is. If you're converting a raw file in whatever software that you're in, you'll see this histogram in the upper part of the window. And as you change exposure and highlights and shadows, that histogram will change in real time to show you what you've got. So if it's showing you that you've got, too many pixels on one end or the other based on the image, you just adjust the exposure until that histogram shifts back where you want it. But when you convert to black and white, you want to make sure that you don't compound the problem. So it's a pretty good idea to check before and after you do the conversion to see if your histogram has changed dramatically. Don't worry about any areas that you might have a little spike like here, as long as you can identify what that is in the image and realize that there's not going to be any detail there anyway. If I had done the exposure to the point where these lights had registered lower than they do on the histogram, then the whole image would have been underexposed. So sometimes you don't worry about it. You just have to know what it is. Here's the blacks, here's the whites, no problem. The bulk of it is in the mid-tone area on this. So let me get out of this, hopefully. And I think I was going to go into to show you some more images as far as histograms on images, but that's really getting us more into high key and low key, which I think I'm going to save for next week. So for right now, I just want to, and I'm not going to talk about the black and white conversions. Watch the video. I will tell you that if you have access to Photoshop, the best way to convert to a black and white is the black and white adjustment layer. Don't use desaturate, don't use grayscale, don't use convert to grayscale. The problem with all of them is that they don't give you any control. If your color image has a number of tones and colors in it, you want to have control over each one of those. I'm looking at, Abby's screen right now. So she's wearing a yellow top. If I were going to convert that screenshot to black and white, if I use the method that I'm talking about, I can determine how bright or dark that yellow goes. I could actually make it black and still create a black and white, or I can make it white or any tone in between. And I can do that with all of my colors. So if you have an image that has a number of colors, you have to realize when you convert to black and white, a straight conversion can actually mash them all together. Blues, greens, teals, aquas, colors like that, they all become one color. Reds tend to go almost black, and that's not necessarily what you want. If somebody's got red lipstick on and you do a normal black and white conversion, they're going to have black lips, and that may not be the look that you're going for. So look for that information. Almost any software has some type of conversion like that.
Yo, he's gone.
Nope, I'm back.
Oh.
Yeah, the whole program just quit on me. It just crashed. So I think in order to, we're right at our limit here anyway. So what I'll tell you is, and I'll post the assignment later tonight on Sakai, but it's for black and white next week. Watch the video for how I do the conversions. If you're not using that software, you may have to adjust a little bit, but the main idea is just to get a black and white that has detail, as much detail as possible in both the highlight and the shadow areas and the tones that are in between. That's a full toned black and white image. So even like the high key one we just looked at with the little jars and the candles, you still want detail even in an image like that in black and white all the way through. If you have any questions, if you're not using Photoshop or don't have access to it, can't find something like that in the software that you are using, let me know. I'll see if I can help you through it. But whatever you do, if you nail the exposure first, you're going to have a much better, much easier time than if you're trying to adjust an exposure down the road. Also, don't just create a black and white image. Let's try to create an interesting black and white image. Think about all the techniques we've done, all the composition, all the lighting we've talked about, things like that. Build as much of that into an image, come up with an idea for a shot, and go out and execute it. If you do only one shot, but you do it really well, no problem, we're good. If you want to do more than that, that's fine, but our I really just want to see one really, really good black and white image from you. Sound good, guys? All right, we are going to end for tonight. We'll see you next week, and we're going to get it next week. We're going to talk a little bit about a little more in depth about the high key, low key aspects, and maybe a little bit more. We have to look at see how many topics we have left to cover. But the assignments will start to get a little more interesting, I think, at this point. Hey, what's your dog's name, David?
This one's Teddy.
Oh, you got more than one.
He's got a brother that's a little bit smaller than him, but they're both huge.
Yeah. So I've been dogless for 6 years, and it's the first time in my adult life I haven't had a dog, and I'm really thinking about getting another one, but I got to stay small. I'm not into picking up big dog stuff out in the yard. So yeah, but if you have a big dog, you got to love them anyway, right? You just can't, if you have a big dog, you love big dogs. That's all there is to it. They love us, right? All right, guys, we'll let you go. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you in a week.